Hello, everyone. It's Jade Bolden, and I am doing another interview today. I'm very excited. This is the lovely Cheryl Morse. Hello,
Oh, thank you.
Cheryl. So we are just besties, and I just love her so much, and I'm sure you guys will too. So she's actually family. She's first cousins with my husband, and I'm just so privileged to know her and to be close to her. So today, I just want to share her beautiful spirit with you, and I know that you'll feel her faith. I feel like it will help you, inspire you to elevate your faith as well. So thank you, Cheryl, for being here today.
It is so my pleasure to be here. Thank you, Jay.
Alrighty, Cheryl. Um, do you want to share with us a little bit about yourself and how life was before you learned how to heal yourself?
Sure. Well, I don't know how far back you want me to go, but I have 3 kids, and one is in heaven and 2 are here with us on the earth. And I was divorced about 2.5 years ago. And this is about maybe a year and a half ago, I found Jade. And again, she's family. So found is like a really interesting word, right?
We're
But
reconnected.
I found out what she was doing and was very interested in what was happening with energy healing and the process of healing that was. And I was in a very deep traumatic experience with the divorce and with my kids splitting and having, being a full-time single mom and having another child with his dad and him away from me. And, there was just a lot of things happening. And I just like, as I remember that process, I just remember spending so much time in my head, so much time overthinking everything, and so much time asking the wrong questions. And I came into Jade, and she was recommended to me by my sister, and I called her and made an appointment, and I talked with her, and we discussed where my thought process had taken me astray, and where things that I'd been taught even as a child had taken me down a path of, that's not what the Lord wants, that's not how the Lord works. And I thought, more than anything, it became this process of what's real and what's true and what's not true, and what is really serving me well and what is just not serving me at all. And we all have those things that are serving us well, and those things that are just taking us down a path of lack of joy and happiness. And that's where I was just in a real process of creating a lot of trauma for myself that didn't need to be there anymore. And yes, there was trauma that was happening in my life, but I didn't need to continue the trauma by asking the wrong questions. And I didn't need to continue the trauma by thinking certain thoughts about myself and others, right? So I had found myself in this victim circumstance. And when I came across the energy healing and started the process of not just healing myself, but of healing others and helping others do that process, it became so empowering and so powerful in my own just thinking, and how our thoughts just change everything. Thoughts can just completely rearrange life for us sometimes.
Yeah, so I hope you can see how wonderful Cheryl is. I love how she speaks so eloquently. You are eloquent, Cheryl.
Thank you, great Jade. That's so sweet. Thank you.
Yeah, and I like how you share of yourself. So I know that a lot of people can relate to you in the grief of divorce, but even before that, the grief of losing your son,
Right.
and not being able to move forward with life. I'm sure many people can relate to that. Whatever the grief is, if it's a death of a loved one or just grief of life in general, like what you said, that, when you were in that situation, you overthunk and then you asked yourself the wrong questions. and the wrong questions mean, there's stuff that doesn't serve us, and we keep on going back in the same patterns. So yeah, so I feel like you probably, people watching this video probably can relate to that, right? So Cheryl was in, a place where she wasn't feeling like she could dream and move forward. I mean, she's very talented in so many ways. I mean, she's a gifted singer and dancer, and just, my husband tells me like how much fun he had with his crazy cousins. They're always doing something really fun, and he just like, enjoyed his time and had great memories with them. And when I met Cheryl, it broke my heart, because there's all of this amazing gifts that Heavenly Father has gifted her with, that she could use to brighten and lighten her life and the lives of people around her. And she wasn't doing it. And so I felt like, there's this, if we can just help Cheryl see herself, she'll be able to be an amazing instrument in God's hands. So Cheryl, the next question is, how did you use your agency, your power of choice, and apply the atonement of Jesus Christ into your life to heal yourself and then become more whole?
I love this question, and I've learned to love the word grace.
Mhm,
And I love this word because I had perfectionist tendencies,
mhm,
and they weren't serving me well. And I thought they were. I was like, oh, I do this great. I do that great. But I had to always do it the best of anything, of anybody, of myself. I was always competing against myself. Like,
yeah,
that wasn't as good as yesterday. Or,
mhm.
man, you can do better. You can work harder. You can sleep less and work more, right? Like, I was just in this place of crazy thoughts that weren't serving me. But I think so many people are in that place. And I think that's kind of a general place almost of our society that we live in, right? Is if I sleep less and work more, or if I work a little harder, or if I just work out a little more, then I'll be
For
skinnier,
sure.
or whatever the thing
Mhm,
is. Okay. But I had these perfectionist tendencies, and my house had to look a certain way, and my body had to look a certain way, and my clothes had to look a certain way. And none of those things are necessarily bad. It was just my thoughts around them were not good. And I learned to offer myself this beautiful grace that was like, you are going to screw up,
mhm,
and you are going to look foolish sometimes, and you are going to not be happy with the situation sometimes, and you are going to go through some really hard things. That's what life is about, and that's what this testing and trial is in this life about. And it's okay to mess up, and it's okay to make it right again, and it's okay to say sorry, and it's okay to move forward after that. And it's okay to not be also, when we do mess up, stuck in this place of, look how bad I am now.
mhm,
It's okay to move forward, and it's okay to relieve yourself of that, and just again offer yourself grace, because that's what the atonement does. The atonement offers grace after grace after grace after grace,
mhm.
because he loves us so much
Yeah.
that he sent his spectacular son here
Mhm,
to lead and guide us back home by example.
mhm,
And though he was perfect, we think we have to be perfect. And there's a place in there that is like, look, perfection is not in this life. Perfection is in a much different place, and
mhm,
a much different growth process than we're even capable of in the mortal body. And allowing myself the time to figure it out, and allowing myself that it's okay to be where I am. And I've learned to love the phrase, come as you are, but don't plan to stay as you are. Because
mhm.
that's what we are, right? We come and God accepts us right where we are, but he doesn't expect us to stay there. And so he wants this beautiful growth from us, but we have to be where we are, and accept where we are, and accept the flaws that are in us, and then move forward in that beautiful space.
Yeah, that's really amazing. Lots of amazing things you said. One of the things that I got from that was, she didn't let things be a condition for her happiness. So, all of the perfection, it's not, you know, those things are not conditions for her to be happy. So when you check all those boxes, then you're happy. So those labels that you give yourself, when you mess up, you don't have to say, oh, that's it, I've screwed up, right? Whatever. Because those labels are very conclusive. And with the atonement of Christ, we can give ourselves grace and allow ourselves to change, allow ourselves a second chance and a third chance and a millionth chance to change, right? And just keep going. Come and be accepted as you are, but then don't expect to remain the same. So that's, the growth that we need to allow ourselves, okay, with the grace of God. So we can push ourselves forward, but not to the point where, we get to discouraged and feel like we're disqualified. So, Cheryl, when you were invited to do the Energy Balancing with Faith course, it was not the best time, was it, in your life?
No, it was, I could think of about 50 reasons why not to do it. And I was at my computer one day I'm a teacher, and I had a break in my day of classes, and I was sitting at my computer, and I had remembered that my sister had mentioned this several days ago, but I had dismissed it because I had 50 reasons not to do it. And I dismissed it. And I was sitting at my computer, and the spirit was overwhelming. And I heard this little voice say, you need to sign up for that course today. And so I got on Jade's website, and I just said, okay, I'll check into it. That's all I could agree to at that time, is I'll check into it. And it was the final day to sign up for the course.
Mhm.
And I was like, it's now or never. And again, this little voice said to me, you got to do this, and I'll make time. And it was like, okay. And listen, here's what I've learned also is when God asks you to do something, you just do it. You just do it right now. You just do it. And amazing things happen.
Mhm.
Amazing things happen. And that's what I have found over and over again. And not unlike any situation, this was the same thing. I signed up for the course, and suddenly what I thought I had no time to do, I found hours in my day opening up so that I could study, watch the videos, be at school in my classroom on my own personal breaks, not during class time, obviously, not during things that I needed to be doing for my job, but on my own personal breaks that I had in my day, like lunch break and my morning break and my afternoon break when I was done teaching. I found these times that opened up. And then at night when I would go home, maybe an hour before bed would open up, and my daughter would fall asleep early or whatever the case was. And these miraculous moments started opening up. And then, again, this little voice would say, you need to go back to the course. You need to check in back into the course. And I cannot even tell you how, even after 2 weeks of the course, I was changed emotionally, mentally. I was like, so much understanding and so much enlightenment and grace. Again, the Heavenly Father was like, look, offer more grace to those around you and to yourself, and learn that some of these things that you're struggling with have been a struggle for generations of your family, and that you've been asked to step up in this place and heal for everybody. And it's okay to heal you, but it's also okay to heal for everybody. And that is a beautiful gift. And if that is the only reason I was sent to earth, then I accept, right?
Yeah,
So
good. So I think of Cheryl as the queen of miracles. When things are difficult, and like I said, it was not a good time for her to sign up. And I know that. And sometimes I feel like, I think people can wait whenever they feel like it. But, when I'm asked to share and tell people, I just do it. And I'm thinking, after I share it, I'm thinking, it's not a good time really, telling God that, but I'm like, oh, I did what you want me to. But yeah, I see Cheryl as the queen of miracles, and there's so many miracles that she shared with me that strengthened my faith, that helped me feel this confirmation that I heard God right, um, and that he does upgrade everything that we want. Um, so Cheryl, you have several stories. You want to pick a few to share with us? The miracles? No,
Where should I start,
I
Jade? I
know.
don't even know where
Yeah.
to start. Um, so, I mean, I can look back on my life and see a ton of miracles, but I, let me just say before I start the stories is that everybody has miracles every single day. It's just a matter of us actually recognizing them and that they're happening to us, right? So my stories maybe are not unlike any of yours, other than maybe I've recognized what has happened as opposed to, oh, well, that was a coincidence. Well, I don't believe in coincidences. I believe that God's hand is in all things.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I can tell a few.
Yeah.
So after I met Jade, or reconnected with Jade, I should say, after we reconnected, I began a healing process, and I had one session with her. And this is kind of maybe a disgusting story, but I'll share just a little bit. But I started having a complete release in my body, both physically, mentally, emotionally, and everything. And I don't know how much I should say, but I began this process of like a 12-day, like complete clean out job of my entire system.
Mhm.
And that was after one session with Jade. And I didn't have any idea that was coming. I don't think Jade knew that was coming, but my body was so ready to release by that point that it was like such disgustingness coming out of me that I was like, beautiful. 12 days this lasted. And I consider that miracle number one. I consider my body flushing itself miracle number one.
Yeah.
And then, well, miracle number 901, right? Okay, because like I'm just sharing a few in this, but this is number one in this story. So after that, I was prompted to start a celery cleanse, and I started that, and the clean out continued for another 7 days. At the end of that 7 days, I walked to the fridge. I had more celery in the fridge, and I walked to the fridge and I went to get it out, and my body literally said no. Every part of me said no. So again, our bodies know so much, and our bodies have such a good aspect. All we have to do is listen. We just have to learn how to listen to the spirit, listen to your body, listen to your heart, listen to your gut, listen to your mind. Make sure it's the last thing that gets understanding and in proper order, right?
Mhm.
So I'm going through this process. I walk to the fridge, this happens, and I'm like, "Whew, done with that." So then I proceed this beautiful healing process. My body is now regenerating all these beautiful cells. So I'm like, okay. And I'm starting to feel this. My body's starting to feel more clean. And it wasn't about what food I was eating, because I am a very good eater. But it wasn't about what food I was eating. It was about my body healing. I could feel a difference in healing. And then there came enlightenment. Like my mind, it would be like, okay, I need you to do this. And it didn't make any sense. It would be like, I kept getting promptings to quit my job. And I had been wanting to leave Gillette for a very long time. And now I had this opportunity, but again, it didn't make sense, right? My kids were there. My ex-husband was there. The kids were 50-50. It didn't make any sense. And so I was like, okay, but I kept getting these promptings to quit my job. And I was like, if I quit my job, I'm a single mom. I have nothing. So I can't really do that. And I kept making reasons why not to. And again, the feelings kept coming, you need to quit. And I was like, okay. Well, miraculously, I walk into my interview, and every interview I had had with any person in the district, in the school, anything had gone so beautifully. And all of a sudden, I walk into this interview with my principal and it goes terrible. And I was like, what in the world just happened? Like it didn't make any sense. And I couldn't understand why in the world he would give me a bad review. And all of a sudden I heard this voice in the middle of the interview that was like, this is your out, take it. And I was like, oh my gosh. And it was like this pure enlightenment. And it was almost like he was a drone speaking to me in like, this is what I must say. Because none of this is making sense, right? And this is what I must say. And I remember hearing the voice, and I was like, okay. And I said to him, I stopped him and I looked at him and I said, I'm going to resign. And he looked at me and he was like, okay. I mean, almost drone like, okay. And I just was like, what is happening? It was just so bizarre. And I went to my room and I wrote up a resignation letter, and I took it to him a couple days later and I handed it to him. and I left my job. And I didn't leave that day because I still had to finish my contract. So I had a couple months left of my contract. So I had committed, but I was now, there was no going backwards, right? So now the Lord had pushed me into this place. And the crazy thing is there was no hard feelings. There was no bad energy. It, like the next day, it was like, he was fine. I was fine. Everybody was fine. And though there was still like moments of like, that didn't make sense, or this didn't make sense, there was still like this peace that was flowing through everything. And so anyway, I ended up leaving Gillette. We left for spring break a week after this happened, and COVID hit, and I didn't understand anything. I now didn't have a job. COVID hit. We had no idea when we were going back to school. And all of a sudden I am like prompted to get online and start looking for jobs in Texas. And I'm thinking, why Texas? That doesn't make any sense. I've never even been to Texas. And so I start looking at these jobs in Texas, and I start applying for jobs, and I get halfway through an application. I didn't even finish the application. Get halfway through an application in what I thought was Dallas, Texas. And I stopped because I got interrupted. And the next day I get an email that says from somebody who said, I saw that you had started your application. We saw that it wasn't finished. Could you apply could you attach your resume to this email? So like a company had contacted me. And so the company contacts me, I attach my resume, then I go back and I I finish filling out the application. Then I get an email the next day from a lady that's like, hey, can you check out our school? We'd love to interview you. And she said, and we talked on the phone for 15 minutes. It went so well. She was like, I'll put a committee together. We'll meet with you on Thursday. It was on a Tuesday. We'll meet with you on Thursday. Then, but please check out our school in the meantime. The school was in Scottsdale, Arizona. I didn't apply for a job in Scottsdale, Arizona. I applied for a job in Dallas, Texas. This wasn't making sense. Nothing was making sense. And I was like, okay, weird. I entered this interview on Thursday. The interview goes more beautifully than any interview I've ever interviewed for in my life. It was clear that I was meant to be there. And so I was like, okay, so I'm going to try to fast forward through this because I don't want to take up all your time, but I try to get this. So I'm trying to sort out in my head, how do I live in Scottsdale, Arizona on a teacher salary? Scottsdale's a pretty expensive place. And so I'm trying to figure this out in my head, and I come up with a number of what I think they need to pay me. And I was like, okay, they come up with an offer the next day, and it's lower, like way lower than what I had come up with in my head that I could live on there, that I would be comfortable. Okay. And so the offer's lower, and I was like, oh no, this isn't good. And so I have this conversation with God. I'm like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? This is really miraculous how this happened. So is this really what you want me to do? Because I know that you can come up with whatever I need to make ends meet if this is what I need to be doing. And I heard this voice, and it said, God's way will always bring the best results. And I was like, okay, that doesn't answer my question. Is it a yes or is it a no? What do you need me to do here? Yeah. And again, it came, God's way will always yield the best results. And I was like, okay. And so I continue on with my scripture study and my journal time, and I'm writing, trying to make sense of everything, and nothing's making sense. And then all of a sudden I got the answer's no. And so I emailed the lady, and I was like, I'm sorry, I can't come. And she emailed back and said, okay, that's such a bummer. Like, we loved you, and we love you, and we would love to have you at our school. And I was like, I know I had all the same feelings, but I can't make it. I can't make ends meet on that money. And so a couple of weeks passes, and I don't have a job. And remember, we're still in COVID, and now I'm without a job, and now I'm home. And I'm like, okay, Heavenly Father, should I be applying for other jobs? And he was like, just be patient. Be patient. I kept getting this, be patient. I'm not a super patient person. Remember, I'm like perfectionist tendencies that are like, I have to do everything and I have to get this done. Right. So I'm not a super patient person. And that's the answer I got, was sit still and be patient. And so I kind of had to fill my time with other things, like more reading, more playing the piano, more singing, more whatever. Okay. And so just to keep my mind off of this. And finally, I get this email about 2 weeks later. And this principal emails me, and she says, and basically offers me $10,000 more. And I've never seen any school district ever go through that process. So I'm thinking, oh, it wasn't about the job, it was about timing. Hence the God's way will always yield the best results. And so all of a sudden I had this unbelievable, overwhelming, peaceful feeling of take the job, now's the time. And I was like, okay. So I accept the job, and 2 months later, move to Scottsdale, Arizona. Sight unseen. I've never been to this place. I've never really lived anywhere besides Wyoming. And so I left, and miracle after miracle after miracle. And it wasn't all my healing. It was me helping others heal in the process, and meeting some of the dearest friends of my life, and meeting my kids met some of the dearest friends of their life, and all of this stuff, right? In December, I'm going to fast forward a little bit. In December, I've gone through this whole healing process, and in July, I was told that I could start dating again. Like, it was okay to date, and it was okay to engage in that process. And I was like, okay, I was a little leery of the whole thing. Like, I was like, nah, I'm good. I think I got this figured out on my own. But look, God can't do with us independently what he can do with us interdependently. And so he creates these beautiful spaces where he allows us to gain so much independence, right? And he's like, when you meet me in this place, and maybe I'm a little confused, Jade, you'll have to maybe clarify some of this, but when we get to this place, I kept getting these feelings of, I can't take you any farther without a companion. And I was like, but I have these wonderful women in my life. I'm good. I don't need a male companion. I'm good. I don't need a husband. I'm solid. And it was like, that's not the answer. And that's not what you really want in your heart. And God knows, like, the deepest desires of my heart. And he knew that what I really wanted was an eternal companion. Like, I wanted that more than anything. And he knew that, and I knew that. And he needed me to get to this place where I was ready to work interdependently again. And I was like, okay. And so when I found this place, it was like, you need to start dating. And I was just like, oh, okay. So I start this process of dating, and I sign onto this dating app, and it is a disaster, one disaster after the next disaster after the next disaster. And it was not making sense. I was like supposed to find Mr. Right out of the chute or something. And it was like, no, you need these experiences, is what I kind of came to. I was like, no, you need these experiences so that, when it gets there, it's there. Like, that that's it. And I was very clear. I had done all this marriage counseling. I had written down all of these things that I needed in a spouse. And I had done all this work of trying to get to this place of starting to date again. And so anyway, I engage in this process. I have probably 15 dates that are what I would describe to you as, I was not interested in a second date. It was like, no, thank you. That is not okay. I am not walking that road. And finally, I sign off the app in August, and I'm like, okay, I'm done, Heavenly Father. Like, you're going to have to just bring him to me. And I engage in this process of music, because I had figured out in my mind, what brings me the greatest joy is to sing. And I was like, had given, again, like Jade had said, I had given some of that up, a lot of that up. And I'd given that up in the name of love, right? And that's not, again, my thoughts weren't serving me well. It wasn't to be given up. It was to be developed and supported with love. And so when that wasn't happening, it was really difficult to understand. And so I just gave it up, thinking that I had to save my marriage instead of all the things that God needed from me in this life. So anyway, fast forward a little bit. So it's August, September, October, November. I walk into a job that is like a second job to my current job of teaching. And it was like just teaching a few private lessons on the side, but I was working for a studio. And I had been telling Heavenly Father that I want to record, I want to sing, I want to record, I want to be in the recording studio, I want to do these things. And all of a sudden I get to this job site, and he's given me a tour of the place. And at the end of the tour, we ended in this recording studio. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I'm flooded with these memories of all the things that I've asked God for. And I was like, oh my goodness, you are literally dropping it in my lap. And
Mhm.
all of a sudden I heard this voice say, so what are you going to do with it? And I was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do with it? What am I going to do with it? And it was like my choice of show me what you're going to do. And I was like, okay. And so I had this little conversation in my head with God that was like, a Christmas album. I'll do a Christmas album. And I left the space. I didn't mention any of that to this person, to my boss, my new boss. And I left the space and I went home and I was like, oh my gosh, and I'm flooded with all of this stuff. Like all of these downloads are coming and coming and coming of what to put on the album, how to do the album, who to invite to help with the album, and all of these things. And I was like, oh my goodness. And so I call the guy and I'm like, I have to do an album. And I'm like, how do I book studio space? And we have this big long conversation and all this money talk. And I'm like, how am I going to pull this off? And so I call my sister and she has a couple thoughts. And anyway, I'm going to fast forward a little bit. So basically what ends up happening is I was in a band growing up and I had this piano player that I worked with that to this day is still one of the most phenomenal musicians I've ever worked with. And my sister said to me, you need to call him. And I was like, we haven't spoken in 25 years. Like, why would he even care of what I was doing at that point? And she said, you need to call him. And so I contacted him on Facebook Messenger and he texted me right back. We hadn't talked in 25 years. And he texted me right back and said, I'm on my way. And he literally drove from Seattle and 2 days later ended up on my door, at my door. And that day, it was Thanksgiving Day. And we started arranging music with my piano. That was another miraculous story.
Yep.
Started arranging music and putting together this album. And in a week's time, we had 7 songs worked up and we hit the recording studio. And I'll fast forward through that story, but we have 7 songs of an album recorded right now, they're in production. Okay, that was at Thanksgiving. That process lasted about a month. In December, I had a week long where everybody was here for Christmas. We were having Christmas festivities, enjoying the children, enjoying guests, enjoying everybody. On the 27th of December, I put all my guests on an airplane and I go to church that day and I'm sitting in church and I am being flooded with downloads of this is a strong foundation. I'll help you rebuild. These are the words I'm hearing. You have a strong foundation. I'll help you rebuild. This is happening fast. I need you to be okay with moving quickly with me. And I'm here. Walk with me. And I was like, okay. And I'm sobbing and sobbing and I can't stop crying. And the spirit is so overwhelming that I could not stop crying. And it kept telling me, write this down, write this down. And I grabbed my phone and I was texting as fast as I could and trying to write things down on my notes and having all these like flood of thoughts. And I go home that day and I'm like exhausted. And I laid down and I took a nap and I woke up from my nap. And during my nap, I had this like vision of signing back onto this dating app. And I was like, oh no, I am not doing that again. Like, no way, no how, no, not chance. I'm not doing that again. And so later I feel the spirit again. It's like, you need to sign onto that app. And now I'm awake. And this weird saying this, it's okay. Like if I'm half asleep, I can ignore it. Right. But if I'm awake and I hear it, then it was like, oh, I can't ignore this. And so I signed back onto this dating app. And the next morning I get a message. I had swiped through probably 100 men that I was not going to even engage in the process. And I had swiped up on maybe 7 out of 100. And all of a sudden the next morning I get this message from this guy and it was unbelievable. And I start having a flood of memories again of all these things that I had asked God for and written down in journal after journal after journal of the things that I would not live without ever again. And he starts asking me questions and I'll fast forward through this part, but day 1, texting, day 2, phone call, day 3, he gets a plane ticket and comes to Arizona. Guess where he lives? Texas. He gets on a plane and comes to Arizona. Neither one of us have done anything this crazy. But by day 2, we had talked on the phone on the end of day one. Day 1, we had a phone call that night. Day 2, we had a phone call that lasted 5.5 hours. At the end of that phone call, he decides to get a plane ticket. On day 3, he flies in. On day 4, we meet, blah, blah, blah. I mean, if you want these details, they're pretty fun as well. But on day 4, both of us knew that on day 2, we'd received the answer that this was eternal, that this was the wedding, that this was the marriage. And this is going to make me cry, but by day 4, it was so clear that this wasn't my choice. This was God's choice for me. And that I had waited long enough that God could create unimaginable in my life. And that I had trusted him enough that he had created unimaginable. And that it was right before my eyes. And I had experienced this time and time again in small ways. And now the big way had just happened. And I was like overwhelmed. And he had this very similar experience, right? And had done all of this work. So from the day we met to the day we married, 67 days passed and we were married. There were so many miracles that had happened in that process. And I don't know many of those are too sacred to share, but there's no doubt in my mind that my life is headed in a completely different direction because I trusted enough to wait and to wait and to wait on the Lord and wait on him and wait for his timing and wait for his patience and learn patience and wait on him, continue to continuously wait on him until it was his timing in his way, because my heart was finally in a place where it was changed, miraculously changed.
Really surrendering to God. Yeah.
So that's where I currently am. I was married about, I don't know, I guess a month it's been already. So I was married a month ago.
Yeah. It's so beautiful. In our minds, we think waiting will take forever. But if you listen to Cheryl's story, it wasn't a long time. In our heads, we rush forward a million years and we're like, it's never going to happen. But really, when we look at actual time, it was just 1 year. She's only been in Arizona for 1 year, and all of these miracles happened. She was able to get back into her gifts and talents, make an album. She's able to, financially be able to take care of herself. And of course, the greatest blessing is to meet Mr. Right, right? But all
Sorry, Jay, what can I interrupt you for just a second? I
yeah.
want to tie this back to the beginning, because remember, I started applying through the Spirit for jobs in Texas.
Yeah.
And by no coincidence, now here I am 1 year later, headed to Texas.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. But when you were flushing and cleansing, you already had that direction, clearing out everything that's, not necessary in your body. And healing is about being whole, and whole means being connected to your divine path, to the Spirit of God. And here she is, like applying to Texas, right? But she needed to have this detour. That detour, Cheryl, was very important, right? And now you end up being where you needed to be. So Cheryl's heading over to Texas very soon, as soon as the school year is over. But there's so many lessons to learn from Cheryl's story. So listen to your body, listen to God. Surrendering fully, and having more of the eternal perspective. And when things are ugly, things are messy, you transcend those things and then do stuff that you're inspired to do anyways. like how uncomfortable would it be just to go back on an app again that, it didn't work in the past, right? To raise yourself above all of that worldly confinement, and then also to raise the bar on your joy. And I remembered having conversations with Cheryl. I know you remember this too, when it's like, this is really good, this is really good. And, I asked her, is it? You're not picky, you're not, outrageous. Hold on to that high level standard that you and God had created. It wasn't just Cheryl. So, I guess Cheryl's story, teaches us so many things, but one of the main things is to raise yourself to a higher level of joy. You don't settle for this amount of income. Don't settle for this kind of okay relationship. It's just keep following God's promptings, and then just have that spiritual insight. So I could go on and on, but I want to ask the last question here. Cheryl, where do you see yourself going forward from here?
Oh gosh. That's a really big question, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of unknowns, and I think we have to be okay in that space as well, because only God knows sometimes, right? I see a really, really bright future. And oh goodness, I am going to get emotional again. There is no question in my mind that Derek and I have so much to do together. There's no question that God has huge plans for us. And I felt it during the dating process. I feel it every single day. And when we hit bumps in the road and it feels like, that's really uncomfortable, I really don't like that. It's like, he's like, you just look back and watch the miracles. Look back. And he reminds us, look, I don't create these things in your life for you to remember them or to have them once. Like, we have these strong experiences to keep looking back at them, and to realize in the darkness, when it feels uncomfortable or when it feels like it doesn't make sense, that he's like, look, I'm a God of miracles. Miracles don't make sense. Miracles, that's what makes the miracles, because they don't make sense. And that's just such a beautiful place to be. So I guess in answer to that question, I see a lot of music in my future. I see a lot of building up of his kingdom in my future. I see a lot of me being an instrument in his hands in my future. I see a lot of miracles in my future, because I will wait on God, and I will wait for him to create that. And I will wait for unimaginable, because I know and I've lived it. And so I will continue to wait for unimaginable and never settle for what I don't care to do, or what I think is my skill, or what I think is okay. I just won't do that anymore. And so I guess I am not certain what that looks like yet, but
we
I'm
know
waiting.
it's very great.
It's
Yeah.
going to be great.
It is going to be great. And I know that we'll be working closely with each other, but I really love what you said, to look forward to a brighter future. So all of us can do that too. There are uncomfortable moments, and there will be continually, but those uncomfortable moments prepare us to receive a greater level of joy. So I think just embrace it, let it pass through, and then, you're better off when you pass through it. And, I tell people a lot to be okay with the depth of sorrows and pains and grief, because you have the equal height of joy. And so if you ask for more joy, be prepared to pay the price. And that's the price of more joy. So there's a lot of worldly limitations that he will invite us to break through as we push forward, and we're like, how is this going to happen? And we apply our limited skills and understanding. He's going to help us break through those barriers to creating a lot of the unimaginables, the miracles in our lives. And it's so exciting. It's sort of like adventure, isn't it? Just so much fun. But
My friends, when I left Gillette, that's all they said to me. I cannot wait to see where you are. Like, I cannot wait to see what happens with your life. And I was like, yeah, me too. Felt like that, right? It feels like, yeah, me too. Like so uncomfortable. And then you're like, I just have to trust. I just have to trust him. And that's what he's just going to test us over and over. So make sure he's trusted, make sure he's first, make sure he's the voice you're hearing, so that you're not listening to other voices that aren't necessary.
Yep. And I like what Cheryl, she advises people, that what's the first voice you hear? What does it say? You know, the initial voice, do that before you override it and then you doubt it. Okay, just keep on focusing on that. And I feel like that's a really good advice that you give people too, Cheryl.
Yeah, man, we overthink so much stuff.
Yeah.
So unnecessarily
yeah.
overthinking.
Yeah.
We talk ourselves out of so many miracles that it's.
Yeah. Yeah. We just self-sabotage that way, but we've learned to like pause and then really respect that. And it shows how much faith you have to, Cheryl, because, you know, things are uncomfortable, but you say, hey, sometimes it's new and sometimes it's a preparatory. So, you know, flushing all that out, several weeks of detoxing, most people will freak out just, you know, after the first discomfort. You know, and usually I gauge who they are. And when Cheryl tells me about that, you know, normally I would tell people, oh, just reduce it, you know, take it easy. But this is Cheryl. So I'm like, no, you know, she's going to be able to handle this. And I'm excited to see, you know, what things will be like when she's done with that process. You know, even moving and stuff. And just, I think people who haven't developed that level of faith, you know, I don't feel comfortable saying, go for it. You know, this is the unknown. You're in between. But I know Cheryl will have that faith to hold on just for a moment, and then good things will happen. You know, I've experienced that myself, and I see a lot of faith in her, and I trust that God's going to deliver. He will deliver. But, you know, there's just space in between that we're like proving ourselves.
So and I feel like I'm back in that space again right now, because not everything is unicorns and rainbows, right? Like, it's real. Sometimes it gets real. And I feel like I'm back in that space now, right? I married Derek and he's been here this whole time. So I haven't had to like be in Texas yet, right? And all of a sudden we're getting to this space where it's like, I have to be in Texas. And my daughter has chosen to go back to Wyoming and not move to Texas with me. And it's killing me. Like, it's breaking my heart, right? And at the same time, as I have to be like, take a deep breath and trust, because I was prompted a certain way. I was told certain things, right? And so I have to hold to that, even while all these other things feel like they're unraveling. I have to hang on to that because I believe you. I believe that God delivers. And I, not only do I believe it, I've lived it over and over again. Right. And so how do you stop living it? It's like that moment where Joseph Smith sits in the grove and he says, look, I knew that God knew that I knew. So how can I deny? Right. And that's where I'm at. A lot of days I'm like, look, I know that God knows that I know, and I can't deny it right now. So I have to keep walking.
Yeah.
And it's really uncomfortable. And I've been to Texas one time in my entire life, one time. And it was this last, when was it? February, when they had the snow and ice storm. And I was stuck in the house, in Derek's house for 10 days. We couldn't leave the house hardly at all. There was no water. There was snow and ice. Luckily, we had electricity, but there was no water. A lot of people didn't have electricity or anything. So that's my Texas experience. 10 days of that. And I'm supposed to move to this place of complete unknown. Right. Like, many of you are probably listening to this going, what is she thinking? Right. But again, like, in this space of like, I know that God knows that I know, and I have to keep walking. And it's so uncomfortable sometimes. And it's so frustrating, right? It feels like, I have to just take a deep breath and do this. I trust you. I trust that you create unimaginable. I trust you.
It's a great time for you to manifest and recognize what you want to ask God for. So it's like, wait, I need to do this, but hey, I need something, da 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 da, and then He delivers, and you just come up with stuff that you didn't know you needed. And then here's this opportunity for Him to show His miracles over and over again. Just really quick before we end here, it's just a small example, not small, it was big. But Cheryl loves music, she loves piano, and just say, hey God, I want a piano, and God says, I'll do one better. Here's this fancy smashy, baby grand, right? That is just
True.
here preserved for you, and here at the fraction of the price that it's worth. So because Cheryl asked, because Cheryl held her level of joy high. Sometimes when we don't hold that level of joy high, we settle so quickly and say, well, okay, I can't afford a piano, I just have to live without. But it's like, no, and no, I know it's hard, but I need this anyways. And God's like, good job, here's one better. So I am expecting this one better all the time for Cheryl and her life. All of our lives, she'll ask for a house and she's just going to get this crazy, beautiful thing, and she's going to ask for this and then she's going to get that. But it's just up to us to feel like we're deserving of more. It doesn't make us spoiled. I think what makes us spoiled is the lack of gratitude. And what Cheryl has proven over and over again is that gratitude and the recognizing of the hand of God in every aspect of her life. That is, faith. That's just such deep faith. And I hope that inspires all of us to review our life and see all the miracles, and then just feel edified by that, and then have this hope for the future that we can create miracles with God, and we can look forward to the unimaginable, and let Him do one better than what you ask for, but you have to put that effort forth to ask, right? Yeah. So thank you so
That's
much.
become my new favorite word. Thank you.
I
love being here
for
with
your
you, Jake.
time. This is so wonderful. I have so much love for you. Do you have any
Ditto.
last words to share with our audience?
Yes, just wait on the Lord and wait for unimaginable. Just be patient and walk through whatever you need to, and listen to the first voice, and it comes quicker than you can imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really does. So thank you everyone for watching this. Thank you, Cheryl. Mwah, mwah, mwah.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Comment below, tell us what you think, and I'll be posting this video very soon. Bye for now.
Okay. Bye.